Hey everyone, welcome to Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Monmouth County's Bringing Home the Harvest series. My name is Bill Errickson and I'm the Extension Agent with the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. So we have a great program for you tonight. I'm going to share a brief research update with you on field trials of African marigolds. We then have two presentations that will be led by some of our Rutgers Master Gardeners. First, Jane Zysk is going to present Sweater Weather, Keep Calm and Garden On, followed by Fall Container Gardens with Sandy Wolfe. Then we'll change gears and talk about the fall seafood harvest with New Jersey Seafood is Health Food, presented by Rachel Tansey, and Monmouth County Fisheries, presented by Dr. Doug Zemeckis. So before we move on, I just wanted to go over a few webinar logistics. First of all, this webinar is being recorded, and as participants, you're all muted and your videos are turned off. So please post any technical questions that you might have in the chat box, and any questions you may have for the presenters should be posted in the Q&A sections, and then we'll have time at the end of the program to field some of those questions. So first, I just want to briefly share with you some of the agricultural research that we are currently conducting in Monmouth County at our Fruit and Ornamental Extension Station in Cream Ridge. So if you joined us last week, you will have heard Jane Sims. She gave an excellent presentation on marigolds, their culinary uses, medicinal uses, cultural significance of this flower in the Day of the Dead holiday, which occurs on November 1st this year. And so African marigolds can be a great ornamental crop for fall markets. However, they're frost sensitive and they can get damaged by cold temperatures in October. So we're conducting a research trial to evaluate two different varieties of African marigolds, Giant Orange and Cocoa Gold, to be harvested in late October for the Day of the Dead celebrations and for fall agritourism markets. So these plants are deer resistant, they attract beneficial insects, they require minimal inputs, and they can produce a quality crop. But remember, they're frost sensitive. So we're growing them under these movable high tunnels, and they provide protection from cold and wind damage, and they prevent rain from impacting the open flowers. So we're measuring their growth rate, the size of the flowers, how many flowers are produced on each plant to see if they might be a viable crop for growers in our area. And I'll have some more updates on this project later this fall. After we harvest the flowers and we look at the data and put it all together, we'll have a presentation and invite everyone out to come and learn more about it. So with that, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Jane Zysk, to share her screen. Hi, Jane.
Hi.
So it's our Master Gardener volunteer, Jane Zysk, presenting Sweater Weather, Keep Calm, and Garden On.
That's right. Here we go. So I don't know about you, but at the end of the summer, I get really bummed because it's the end of the summer. But I love this quote from Nathaniel Hawthorne that says, "I cannot endure to waste anything so precious as autumnal sunshine by staying in the house. So I've spent almost all the daylight hours in the open air." And I love that because sweater weather, that's what we want to do. We want to get out every day, go out in the yard, go out in the garden, get the fresh air in our lungs, especially during the pandemic. Let's see what there is to do. We're going to look in the vegetable garden, we'll look in the flower garden, and we'll look at the lawn through October through to the winter time and see what there is to do. October in the vegetable garden is a perfect time to harvest your cool season crops, your radishes, lettuce, parsley, carrots, anything you had planted in August, September. And you never know, there might be some other surprises for you. This picture on the right is a harvest I made in October of 2018. You see there are tomatoes, there's a cucumber that I squeaked out, some basil and parsley. With the weather, you never know. And with a day like today, it's been so warm that you can still harvest your warm season crops. October is also great to remove any of the flowers or the small fruits that you know won't ripen before the frost. And you wouldn't be able to tell again from today, but the first frost in Monmouth County is usually around mid-October, the 15th to the 20th. We're very warm this year, but still, you want to remove the small fruits and the flowers from things like tomatoes and peppers, because you want the plant to put its energy into ripening the fruit that's already there rather than growing new. You want to remove any plants that are no longer producing or that are diseased. If there's anything diseased, throw it out. And it's a good time to update your garden notes. And it's really a good idea to take notes in about your vegetable garden every year, because I don't know, if you're like me, you'll forget. Note things like the plant location so that you can rotate your crops every year. Note down any successes that you had and any not so great successes. Notice we don't have failures, we just have not so great successes. And any ideas for next year. So if you, over the summertime, saw your friend planting something really cool and you liked it, note that down so you don't forget, and you can do it next year. Also, October is a great time to start enriching your soil for next year. So put down a layer of compost or manure to let sit over the winter time, or plant a cover crop, something like a legume, a vetch, a clover, beans or peas, or plant some grains, either oats or buckwheat, winter wheat or rye. Or you could also get a cover crop seed blend. And what you do is grow these, and then in the springtime, till them in, and you'll put great nutrients into your soil. Now, because it's a pandemic too, and there's really no other places to go, it's a great time to start maybe experimenting with some things you haven't done before. So start a compost pile. It could be very simple, like this picture on the left. This was my yard. I had a pile of leaves. I threw a tarp over it, put some lumber down to hold the tarp down so it wouldn't blow away, and let it sit for 3 or 4 years. And I had the most beautiful, beautiful mulch that I could. It was like peat moss. It was gorgeous. If you don't want to do that, you can make a cylinder of hardware cloth and start layering your compost, your browns and your greens. You want about 2/3 to 3/4 browns, which would be leaves, maybe some shredded cardboard, some shredded paper. And then your greens would be your scraps from the kitchen. So anytime you cut up any vegetables and you have, the ends of your carrots or the seeds from your peppers, you throw them in a bin, take them out, put them in there. Those are your greens, and you'll get some lovely compost. The more expensive way to go is to buy one of these bins. And I actually did this because I found I was getting mice in my compost, and this, when it raised up on the legs and I could rotate it, I kept the mice out. But there are many other options too. You could also try a cold frame, and this is something that takes advantage of the greenhouse effect, so it allows you to plant your crops earlier and also keep growing later in the season. So this is a cold frame that my brother had built years ago with some plexiglass on a wooden frame. And you can see in December of 2018, I had radishes growing and I had lettuce growing. And then in January, this picture on the lower right, you see I got to harvest those radishes and lettuces. Now, they were a little small, but boy, to harvest something fresh like that in January, that was tasty. In the flower garden, October is the perfect time to plant spring flowering bulbs, your daffodils, hyacinths, crocuses, grape hyacinths. You do want to wait until November for tulips, though, because you want to wait until your nighttime temperatures are reliably 40 to 50 degrees so that the bulbs don't rot. October is a great time to divide and transplant perennials, your irises, your echinacea, which is purple coneflower, black-eyed Susans, because the roots have time to establish before the ground freezes, and then the plant will be so much happier in the springtime. And don't forget to keep weeding. Weed, weed, weed. Don't ever let them go to seed. That is my mantra, because if you have one weed go to seed, that seed is viable for 7 years, and you will be pulling that same weed and its progeny out for the next 7 years. So just keep weeding. And if you happen to find you have some bare spots or you need a pop of color somewhere, plant some pansies or mums. And if, like me, you're not sure you really want to plant them, you can always just dig a hole and sink the pot in the ground. Instant color. For the lawn, especially if you have weather like we've been having, continue to mow as needed. And that's my son mowing our lawn. And you can begin tidying up your edges. So the edges of your flower beds, the edges along your sidewalks, the edges along your curbs, because you want everything to be just neat and tidy. October, you can also renovate your lawn, whether it's aerate, thatch, overseed, reseed. September's a good time too, but we're already in October, so you can keep going because the ground hasn't frozen. And it's a good time to fertilize with a low nitrogen fertilizer, because nitrogen helps promote leaf growth, foliage, and greening. You don't want to do that. You want to promote root growth and healthy roots. But before you fertilize or pay anyone to fertilize, please get a soil test, because it's silly to waste your time, money, and effort if you don't need it. And the way you get a soil test is you can go to this website here, Soil Testing Lab, and there's all the instructions on how to do that. And you'll get back a very detailed report about exactly what to put down on your lawn to keep it healthy. In fact, if you go to this website down on the bottom, the pub's website, you'll see there are many of these fact sheets, the picture on the lower right. So much information, not only about lawns and soil testing, but about vegetables and flowers and trees and shrubs, just a wealth of information. It's all free. Please visit that website. Now, October into November, I love this quote: "Autumn carries more gold in its pocket than all the other seasons." And that's referring to all the fallen leaves. That is pure gold. So if you mow or shred the fallen leaves, you can use them to mulch your flower beds, the ones that you just nicely edged, right? So you have a nice edge. Now you mulch them for the winter time. They're all tucked in. Everything's great. You can even use the fallen leaves for the browns for your compost pile that you're trying out. And in October, November, and I'm kind of iffy on the timing because you want to wait till after the first frost. It's time to protect your figs. Figs are a tropical plant. The stems and the bark can't handle all of the freezing temperatures here in Monmouth County. So just as these folks are doing, you wrap it up with tar paper or landscape fabric, something to insulate the stems, and you top it with a bucket so that water doesn't get in there and freeze. And then come springtime and summertime, you'll have a beautiful fig tree with wonderful figs to eat. Now, November in the vegetable garden, it's time to cover your overwintering crops with a nice layer of straw, your carrots, your beets, your turnips, and yes, your strawberries, because strawberries, cover them with straw. Now, straw, I want to take a little sidestep here because we use hay bale and straw bale interchangeably, and they're not the same. So straw has no seeds in it, no seed heads, no seeds. Hay bales have seeds and have seed heads. And that's because hay is most often used as animal feed. So you want that extra nutrient in there. But if you use hay with seeds in your garden, you'll have to weed out the hay. So try to get a straw bale and go to a reputable nursery and you should be able to do that. But don't cover your parsley yet, because parsley is a cooler weather. It can handle a lot of the winter temperatures. And on the coldest nights, you may just want to run out and cover it with a basket or a little jar or Tupperware or something. And don't forget to continue to turn and aerate your compost so that it keeps cooking. And in November, you just never know. This picture on the left is my tomatoes in November of 2013. And that white stuff all on it is snow. So they were doing well. You could see there were little tomatoes ripening. And then all of a sudden there was a snowfall. Who knew? And also in November of 2013, I found this radish that I hadn't harvested. That's my hand. Gigantic radish. Brought it in the house, cut it up. It was actually very good. But just 3 years later, in 2016, look what I was harvesting in November. Tomatoes, peppers, purple peppers. So, we're calling this sweater weather, but you never know. It might be t-shirts, it might be jackets. Just go out in the garden and see what there is. In the flower garden in November, we want to lift and dry and store our tender bulbs. Notice I said lift, not dig up. If you go in there with a shovel, you might split your bulbs and slice them, and that's not good. So take a garden fork, the one with the nice wide tines, and lift them, okay? Your gladiolas and your canna, and keep them dry for the springtime. Now it's November, so plant those tulips and any last minute additions. And by that, I mean, if you ordered bulbs and the order came late, you can still put them in as long as the ground hasn't frozen. And if you're like me and you go to the garden center and you see the daffodils and stuff on sale and you just have to buy them, you can still get them in the ground in November. It's also a good time to look for sales on perennials. Now, the plants themselves won't look very good, but if the roots are healthy, you'll have great flowers next year. So if you see the pots, which you probably will because they've been potted all summer, with the roots coming out of the bottom, like this picture on the left, you know it's pot bound. So pull it out, and if the roots are nice and white or light tan like this, the roots are healthy and the plant will survive. But you do want to tease those roots out. You want to straighten them out as much as you can, because if you plant it like this with the roots all going in a circle, they'll just keep going in a circle and you won't have a healthy plant. Now, you may also find your roots are so matted, like this picture on the right, that you can't tease them out at all. So in that case, you just make some slices, 4 to 5 slices, separate it out a little, plant it, and it's going to be just fine. Also in the flower garden, you want to mulch your bulbs after the ground freezes. And this is so that you give it just enough insulation so that in the freeze and thaw cycles in the wintertime, the bulbs don't heave. They stay just where they are. Now, in November, you finish gathering and discarding any diseased plant material. And here I'm thinking mostly of peonies. They are very susceptible to powdery mildew. That's what this picture is on the left. And your roses that are susceptible to black spot, you want to clip those off and throw them out. And if your peonies are brown by now, which many of mine have been, but you know that they had powdery mildew, throw them out. Throw them out. Don't put that in your compost pile. For the lawn, if you haven't yet fertilized, and if it has not yet frozen the ground, you can still fertilize, but as only up until November 15th, because there is, which I just learned, a New Jersey fertilizer law that says you may not fertilize your lawn after the 15th, because typically by then the ground is frozen and it'll just, the fertilizer won't sink in, it'll just run off and go right off into our waterways and pollute. So September, October, but if you have to in November, you can still squeak it in perhaps. Now, we still want to rake and mow and shred our leaves because the leaves are still falling in November. And notice I said rake because we're getting out and we're getting some exercise, right? Breathing some fresh air. Now, if you have more leaves than you have flower beds to mulch, you can always do what I do, which is store some in big giant plastic bags for next year's compost, because I always have a hard time getting enough browns. So I put them in the big plastic bags and either put another bag on top so they don't get wet, or make sure I tie it up, twist tie it really well. And just as this fella's doing in the bottom right picture, finish tidying up your edges, particularly along your walkway, so you have a nice clean edge so that in the wintertime when it snows, you can shovel. Yes, we are doing upper body work. Okay, November also is a good time for any of those miscellaneous tasks. Drain and roll up and store your hoses so that water doesn't freeze and burst them. Drain your irrigation systems, whether it's a drip irrigation or your underground sprinklers for the same reason, you don't want pipes to burst. Turn off your outdoor spigots if you don't have a long enough pipe inside. You don't want those pipes to freeze. Clean, sharpen, oil your tools, get them ready for the springtime. And bring any pots indoors, but particularly your clay pots, your terracotta pots, because they will crack in the wintertime. So you want to empty them, you want to clean them, scrub them, get them all set for the springtime. And it's also a good time to service your lawnmower because not everybody else is doing that. So, and you'll be all set for the springtime. And in the vegetable garden, even in December, take a peek. You may be surprised at what you find. In December of 2018, this was my garden and the parsley was popping because we had a little a warm spell. And so I had fresh parsley in my dinners and it was fabulous. So keep going out every day, even in December. And in the dead of winter, yes, it's hot cocoa time. And this quote I just love too. The color of springtime is in the flowers, but the color of winter is in the imagination. So pull out all of your catalogs, your seed catalogs, your flower catalogs, even pull out your gardening books for inspiration on what you might want to do and how you might want to set up your flowers. But don't forget to go outside because look, the picture on the lower left, this is actually my garden before I installed the gate, of course. But look how lovely it is in the snow. It's just beautiful. And it says, come in, it beckons you, right? So inside the garden, now I'm showing you a little bit under the covers because you can see I'm kind of a slob sometimes. So I just toss stuff around, but look how pretty the snow makes it look. And yes, I did not take my pots in that year. And yes, they did crack. And yes, these are my compost bins that are risen up on legs so that the mice don't get it. But my point is, go out every day. Every day, there's always something to do to stay healthy. Special thanks to Bruce Crawford, Katie Bliss, and Barbara Bromley for their wonderful materials that helped me create this talk. And most of all, thank you to everybody listening. Now, let me stop sharing.
Thank you, Jane. That was excellent. It's some of my personal passions are, season extension, seeing how long we can get crops to grow into the winter, and just trying to keep a connection to the garden and to the plants and to the outdoors for as long as we can. So
all year.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was great.
You're welcome.
So next up, we have Sandy Wolfe, who's going to present fall container gardens, and took a look through Sandy's slideshow to preview it. This is a really nice visual slideshow, so I'm looking forward to the presentation. You all set, Sandy?
I'm all set. Thank you,
All right.
Bill.
Go ahead and share your screen.
Jane, that was a wonderful introduction. I've got a rough act to follow, but we'll do fine. Anyway, we're going to take you into fall container gardening, which is growing things in containers. And I'll tell you later on how you can assemble this one with all of those jack-o'-lanterns. Your container garden can consist of plants that you bought at the local nursery, and then you would stick in the wild grasses or wheat and sprays of dried berries like they did here with the bittersweet, so that you've got a nice tall dimensional garden. You could
Sandy,
also do, yeah.
Can I interrupt you for a second? I am not seeing your screen come through.
You're not. What am I doing wrong? All right, let's go. Did you see the opening one? No.
No.
All right, let's backtrack here. I want to share session, right? That's what I didn't do. How's that?
Here we go. It's coming. Yep. There you
go. Okay,
go.
Let's start again.
Take two.
There we go. And as I was saying, later on in the presentation, I'll tell you how you can assemble this jack-o'-lantern garden. You can start with plants that you bought at the local nursery. Just put them in a larger pot. You can leave them in their little pots, it's fine. And then you would just highlight the container with dried grasses or dried berries, whatever you would like to do. And that's for a large one. If you want to do a small one, again, we have a small pot. You'll notice this is a terracotta pot. So you got to keep an eye on the weather. If it's going to be frozen, freezing, frost, whatever, you want to bring that pot inside, or else the moisture in there is going to expand and it will crack your pot. But when you put together a garden like this, you want to keep in mind that all the plants, they need the same light, they can take the same temperature, they can take the same amount of wind, and that they can absorb the same amount of heat from that pot. The light is mentioned on the stickers usually of the plants when you buy them. Temperature, we're very fortunate because the nurseries would put out ones that would survive this time of the year. Wind, you might say, well, why do I need to know that? Well, if you live at the shore, you've got a lot of wind that comes in down there. So you want to make sure those flowers and the leaves, they can take that wind. And here, as you can see, we have asters and flowering kale and some licorice. Now, those are tame containers. Some people like to go the whimsy way, and they'll use a rusted out old wheelbarrow. It has character. Or here's an old Tonka truck back in the day when they were first made of metal. And in the bed of that, they also have put something together. Other people, they like hanging baskets. And if you're going to put pumpkins in there, you want to make sure that your basket is very, very sturdy. This particular basket, it's lined with sphagnum moss. And you can see there's pots of mums rather that have been inserted in there. There's also some straw flowers, and there's pumpkins and gourds. But there again, that's a heavy basket. You want to make sure it is a sturdy basket and that where you've got it anchored in, it can take all of that weight. So now that I've wet your whistle a little bit, let's get started. You need to select a container. You can do wood, you can do terracotta, you can even do a basket, you could do any toys or whatever. You can buy ones that are finished. But as I say, you've got to keep in mind, if it is going to go below freezing, you want to bring those containers in if they're terracotta or clay, because when the moisture freezes, it expands and there goes your pot. Wood is good, as in the barrel up here. You might want a plastic liner, but that's up to you. Same thing here with the baskets, but they're all excellent containers. Now it comes time to use your soilless mix to go in there. You do not want to put soil from the ground in your container gardens. They're loaded with different types of diseases. There's some insects in there that you don't want. It's too heavy of a soil. The roots can't get enough oxygen and they don't get the water. So here's some soilless mix that's all very good. I'm not endorsing any particular brand. I just pulled these up, but they're all good. You can get them in any local store, but you want to use a soilless mix. And this time of the year, don't use one that's got the moisture absorbing crystals in it. Okay, moving on to our pots. Plants like water. Plants also, the roots need air. And most of the pots that you buy, you're going to find there's one hole in them, and you've got to get either out the drill, the hammer and the nail, or a hammer and a screwdriver and put extra holes into your containers so that the water and the oxygen can flow in and out, and then you have happy plants. Comes time for drainage materials, because you don't want that soil to go out. You can recycle your netting bags from vegetables. You could put a coffee filter in the bottom of your pot. Pantyhose, knee highs, whatever you want to call them, they make a good drainage material to go inside your pot. You don't want to put that much, just one or two to cover up the holes. But by all means, if you have a big planter, you're not going to use all that soil in there, I know that. But you don't want to fill it with other containers, because we found that blocks off the oxygen supply and it doesn't allow proper drainage with the water. So don't do this one like we were taught a long time ago. So remember, the only thing that you're going to be using gravel for, by the way, is for with the potted plants, is that you're going to put your plant in a container and put the gravel underneath it for drainage. Don't put any gravel inside your pot, because that's going to raise the water level in the pot, and then the plants, they can't breathe right, and they will drown with all the water that is laying in there. So put gravel in there for drainage, and then put your pot on top of it. No rocks, no gravel, no packing peanuts, no charcoal, no nothing. Just fill the pot with the potting soil mix. Oh, and by the way, make sure the potting soil you use is for outdoor container gardens, not for indoor plants. The indoor potting mixture is much too heavy for outdoors. So, and here we are, a reminder as to why you don't put the gravel in there. Now, there's also a psychology you might want to use. You don't have to, but you might. A lot of people use a color wheel. You can plant in a complementary color theme with yellow and then purple, or maybe red and then a green. Or maybe you want to use the primary colors with a yellow, a red, a blue, and you end up making an equilateral triangle. Or you want to do orange, purple, a green, and so forth and so on, rotated around. Now, the psychology behind colors also is the warm colors, which are the ones in the upper right of this circle, and the cool colors in the lower left of this circle, or the left side. The warm colors give you security, make you feel good, give you confidence. The blue colors, if you're a hyperactive person, they'll calm you down. So maybe you want a garden that it has the characteristics of welcoming people, so you use warm, or you want a spot where you can go at the end of the day, so you'd use your cool colors. Talking about psychology, next time you go to the food store, look at the packaging of the materials or the things you're going to buy that are in the aisles. You're going to notice there's a lot of warm colors. Unless you go over to the pharmaceutical section, there you might find the blues and greens. These are the ones that would use the cool colors in their advertising. So look at that next time. And here you go again on the right side with who would use the warm. You don't have to do it that way, but that's the psychology behind colors. Now, this time of the year, it's a short growing season. You don't need much fertilizer at all. You can use a time release with the 14-14-14. Again, I'm not endorsing any brand, but these, anything like this, it's an easy way, a one-shot deal for fertilizing. Sprinkle it on the top and you're done. Or you can go back and use the other ones, the 15-15-15 that are water soluble. Follow the directions on the package, or even go it by half, dilute it, no problem. Speaking of water soluble, a lot of people that aren't into gardening too much, you hear them go, how much water do I give? How do I know when the plant needs watering? Well, you can always buy a water thermometer. Sometimes they work. They'll tell you not a thermometer, but they'll tell you with the soil whether it needs water. Other people buy these watering globes where you can turn them upside down, fill them, and then put them right into the soil like here in the lower picture. Some people also, they put a rock in their plant, in their planter. They can take it out, and if the soil is moist underneath, they know, well, then the soil is still good. It doesn't need to be watered. Or you can do the old finger trick. Just stick the finger in, and if it comes out moist, you're okay. All right, now you've got a little information how to put things to start your garden. One theme is also using a thriller, a filler, and a spiller. Here you can see cattails and grasses and reeds as the thriller. Thrillers are usually no more than 1.5 times the size, or the height, shall we say, of the container. They fill it with, just as it says, fillers, plants that don't get tall and plants that don't hang over. Here's some mums, some ornamental cabbages. There's some walkabout sunset. And the spiller here is ivy. They use spillers to soften the corners of the container. So that's something to think about. People who like large containers like this, you've got to keep in mind, it might fall over. So they've got here against the wall. They also have pumpkins and gourds against the bottom. Here's a spiral cedar, which is a perennial that's in that pot all year long. And if you look at that pot, it's a terracotta pot. That's got to be moved if you're going to have, you know, cold weather, freezing weather. So that's something to keep in mind. This is a leftover garden from summer. You can tell by the Persian shield because it's huge. Persian shield, if you use it, by the way, it can be poisonous to animals. So keep that in mind. Mums and ornamental cabbages are there. There's wandering Jew and variegated ivy. These plants all require the same amount of sunlight and water. And as I say, when you buy the plant, look at the sticker. You want to get plants that all like the same amount of light. Talking about softening corners, here is a container that's softening the corner here in the building. The container has a lot of rounded leaves that does that. And yes, it does have edges, but you've got your spiller that spills over it to soften it as well. And if you've got some other rusty things laying around, here's an old wash tub with a stand. And they've got some plants they've put in there, literally almost looks like they're thrown. There's some English ivy as the thriller. You've got some dried white California buckwheat and some liatris. And then you've got your pumpkins that are in there and makes everything pop. I was coming home today, whoops, and I happened to see a bunch of chairs and I was tempted to pick them up, but no, I was very good, I didn't. But here's an old chair that might have ended up in the trash heap somewhere, but someone who's a gardener saw it, brought it to life. And they took the seed out and plunked the pot in it. And this too was left from summer. You can see ivy, and all they did when all the other plants came out was they put a pumpkin in. Very easy, very easy. All right, when you select the plants, use plants that have the same amount of light and water requirements. Remember that, or else they don't do well. And here's some ones that they have just put together, excuse me. Getting back to the color wheel, warm color autumn container gardens. And here's some ideas for you. I put the color wheel up in the corner, but you've got your reds and you've got your oranges in here. And here is one that gives you a whimsical feeling with the grasses. You've got different ones that are, you've got your coral bells and your mosaic, excuse me, your heuchera. That's a perennial. Will come back next year, the following year. Sometimes pansies will come back as well if it's a warm enough winter. English ivy, the same thing. Here's a larger container to give you another idea. It's a footed one. It's a copper one, beautiful. And they've got an assortment of colors in here. You can see on the color wheel, it gives you an uplifting feeling. Here's some cool ones using the purples and the blues. We've got an orb hanging basket. You've got your pansies with pumpkins in there. Again, it's a sturdy basket. And then here we have a planter in the middle with the purples and the blues. And then they have white twigs with eucalyptus. It just makes everything pop. Here's a thriller with a filler, but no spiller. Everything is rounded. You don't need it there. But this type of a garden, it would calm you down. Texture. Texture comes in your grasses and in your leaves and in your seeds, and it gives you an emotion. This one, I just, wow. But it's a calming wow because it's got your cool colors. Now here is one that uses your warm colors. They have gotten a large pot. The pot happens to be a 14-inch brown container. And in it, they have just plopped the other pots. They're 4.5-inch pots of the wallflower, the grass, the peach, sorbet peach melba. There's some Easter bonnet peach pansies, alyssum, and then there's some pansy frizzle. And then in the background, they even have other pansies that are in the ground. But this is an easy way of throwing a garden or putting a garden together. They can literally throw it together. Another type of a garden, excuse me, is an edible one. Now this particular one has pansies. And if you look, you see these red stemmed plants. I came across that a few years ago, incorporating beautiful rainbow chard in gardens. It just makes everything pop, whether it's fall, spring, summer, it makes no difference. So if you haven't ever done that before, try it. Even if you're doing a garden that isn't in a container, put them in. It really, really adds character. That red and the yellow, it really makes things pop. And these are all edible. Of course, you have to keep an eye, know where they came from. You can grow fall veggies in containers. Jane was telling you, go out and look in the garden, you might find some surprises. Well, these we have rainbow chard, leaf lettuce, and even Russian kale ready to go into a pot. And then when the cold weather comes at night, you can bring those plants inside. Some would hold up more to the cold weather than others. I know I've had Russian kale, I've raised it all winter long. As a matter of fact, I put it in the spring and it would continue all summer into the fall and into the winter. So it worked out very good. You can grow a complete salad, get a bigger tub. And here you can see where there's a very good assortment of different leaves that you would put and blooms that you could put into a salad. Now that's a larger one. You could do a smaller container. You can see here, you've got a container and a container. So there's gravel underneath, but here's some more. These plants, they take less light. They're all demand, as I said, the same amount of light and moisture. And you can bring that inside if you want for a while and see how that does. And then speaking about inside, you can extend the light of vegetables rather inside, some of them indoors. Take your celery, leave it at least 2 inches at the bottom. Excuse me. And you'll notice you get new shoots with leaves, good for soups. Excuse me, man. You can do the same. You can do the same thing with the green onions. You can put herbs on the windowsill in the fall and carry them over in the winter. Some people like whimsy in the garden. Here's some ideas for containers. Here's a fairy garden and another fairy garden. And you can change the artwork in them to go along with the seasons. This particular painter is put into a large pot. You need a drill. You've got to put a hole in the bottom of the pot, and then you have to put a reinforcing rod. You want to use not real pumpkins, but plastic pumpkins. Put your first pumpkin on the angle that you want, and you drill your hole through it. Put some gravel in the bottom, and then put up a pot with your chrysanthemum in it, and do it so forth and so on. You don't want to make it too high because then you're going to have it top heavy. But it's something that's cute. And talking about whimsy, here we've got containers incorporated into our regular garden. They give us color for the fall. There's a couple of other ones as well. And as you're putting your fall containers together, keep in mind you've got winter coming on. and you can very easily take out your fall and put your winter props in. So it's very, very easy to do. So once you have all of this done, make sure you sit down, enjoy your work. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. That was excellent. I really like all the creativity that goes into creating these container gardens. There's a lot to it.
It
Have
is.
a
It's
whole
fun.
palette, and yeah. So thank you very much. That was great.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up we have Rachel Tansey from our Family Community Health Sciences Department in Monmouth County, and she's going to talk about New Jersey seafood is health food. Rachel, you're all set?
Hi everybody. Alrighty, just sharing my slides. And I'm just going to do a really quick overview. We have Dr. Doug Zemeckis coming on in a few minutes, and he's going to go over a little bit more detail of the New Jersey seafood and the fisheries that we have. I'm just going to talk about some of the health aspects of our seafood. So our whole presentation for this whole month of October is actually the bountiful harvest of New Jersey, particularly Monmouth County, but really just all New Jersey. So one of which, I'm not sure if everybody is familiar, but fish and seafood is actually harvested or landed, as they say, in New Jersey as well. So that's one of our bountiful harvests, and many fish and seafood shellfish are available in many of our fish markets. So when you are looking to purchase your fish or seafood in general, really look for any reputable source. As I said, there's many fish markets all along the shore and even a few inland that I know Doug will probably give us a little bit more details on that. But just make sure it's a reputable source. When you're looking for your actual cut of meat or your shellfish, you really want to make sure that there isn't a fishy odor when you're picking out the seafood. It may have like a briny or a saltwater type smell, but it really shouldn't smell like bad fish. If you're looking for shellfish, you want to make sure they're kept alive. So typically, you know, if a clam is a little bit open, you tap on the top of the shell and it should close up. And then you make sure that they're kept alive until you're ready to prepare them. So, you know, oftentimes you can bring home maybe some shellfish and put them in a cool pot of water, not turning it on yet, and just let them kind of soak for a little bit. Sometimes they expel a little bit of the sand and things like that. And then once you're ready to cook, you kind of get rid of that water, and then you do whatever preparation you're ready to do. Make sure all of your fish is refrigerated properly, both while you're at the store, that, you know, maybe the fish is kept on ice or behind some type of refrigeration. And then also when you come home, you make sure you do the same until you are ready for preparation. Some of the top New Jersey harvested seafood in general. This is a picture of some of the sea scallops that have been harvested in New Jersey on the left there. And then we also have oysters, lobsters, black sea bass, bluefish, clams, both quahog and surf, blue crabs, monkfish, summer flounder, also known as fluke, and tuna, both yellow and bluefin, amongst many others. But these were just kind of the top ones that I was finding. Also, when you are looking to prepare your seafood, you do not want to overcook it. If you do, it will result in a tough, dried out fish. Our fin fish, so anything obviously with fins, should be cooked to an internal temperature of about 145 degrees. Using a meat thermometer, you want to push the meat thermometer in the thickest part of the meat and hold it there for about 15 seconds. And seeing what that temperature is, that will let you know if it's reached the 145 degrees. If you're cooking a whole fish, steak or a fillet, you basically want to make sure that the thickness of the steak or fillet fish, for every 1 inch, you cook it for about 10 minutes. So, I mean, you know, if you're having a big thick steak, it's going to be, you know, probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But if it's just kind of a thin fillet, it would be less than that. To test for your doneness of the fish, you actually want to sort of separate it a little bit with maybe a fork or the end of a knife and just pull it away and see if it's kind of flaky and opaque. You don't want any like sort of translucent looking fish. You want it to be an opaque color. And then you let it stand for about 3 to 4 minutes just to make sure it finishes up the cooking process. For our shrimp, lobster, and scallops, as I was mentioning, you want to make sure those are also an opaque color and that the flesh should kind of be firm when touched. It should no longer have that little, jelly type feeling. It should be a nice firmness to it. For clams, oysters, and mussels, as I said, when they are alive, the shells should close nicely. Once they are cooked, they should open. If they did not, after a reasonable amount of time for cooking, then you should really discard any because they probably were not good and you need to get rid of them and don't eat them. I'm not sure if you're aware, but October is actually National Seafood Month. So that's part of our great program that we're doing on another night. I know Doug's going to talk about that. So part of our harvest in New Jersey not only comes from what's in the ground, but also about what we have in our ocean and our waterways. So what's the hype about our seafood anyway? Well, nutritionally speaking, it's actually really good for your health. Typically low in fat and a high quality source of protein. Very rich in vitamins and minerals, which actually help boost your immune system. So we can all use a little boost in that right now in the fall months and as we head into winter and all those different illnesses out there. Our brain health is very critical and our nervous system. Fish is very rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which are very good for our heart. It's a heart healthy fat, which can help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and may actually help lower high blood pressure. Fish and shellfish in general are often a very important part of our diet, and keeping a well-balanced, healthy diet, you should really aim for about 2 servings per week. More wouldn't hurt, but at least about 2 servings per week. A fillet of fish or a steak would be roughly the size of a checkbook, so a little bit larger in length, and kind of about a half an inch or so is roughly 1 serving. So that's about 3 ounces. You can have more than that, and that would be great for your heart health and keeping your diet balanced. When you are preparing your fish, really make sure that you're trying to do a preparation that uses very little fat. You want to do it in some healthy method like baking, broiling, grilling, or steaming. And here, I am going to stop sharing this because I want to show you this little video one of my colleagues did, and I will share that so that you can see it. Okay, hold on 1 second. I'm not sure why it opened that way. Okay, here we go. So that is all I have for you today. And I thank you. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat. Or like I said, we'll have other events in the upcoming weeks and you can join us then. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. That was excellent. Forever trying to perfect my searing of scallops, and I feel like I can never get it right. Maybe it's an elusive goal, but I always try. Yeah, New Jersey seafood is an excellent option and, essential component of our harvest, something that's been eaten in this area and in this region for hundreds, really for thousands of years. It's a food that people subsisted on for all times of the year. And so with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Doug Zemeckis to join us. Doug is our Marine Extension Agent. He's going to be talking about Monmouth County fisheries.
Good evening, everyone. Just getting set up here. IT, Matt, can you allow me to share my video?
You should have the, yeah, there you go.
There it goes.
There we are.
You see my video, my face?
No, we see your screen, but we don't see you.
Have you started your video?
Yes, and you denied me the opportunity.
I'm not a host.
There you go.
There we
There you
are.
are. Hey, Doug.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Now you can see my face. All right, there we go. All right. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting the great event, team from Monmouth County. I'm Doug Zemeckis. I'm the Marine Extension Agent. We're based in Ocean, but serving Ocean, Atlantic, and Monmouth counties in fisheries, aquaculture, and coastal resource management. So this evening, I'm going to give an overview on Monmouth County's fisheries, both commercial and recreational, continuing the transition to thinking about our harvest, our fall harvest, not just on terrestrial products, but also what we can harvest and consume seafood wise from our marine ecosystems, and also building also on the terrestrial talks tonight, like Sandy's excellent talk. Some people want to make a fisher lantern, or as Jane's talk, provide inspiration to think year round, both in our backyards and our commercial agriculture products, but from a recreational standpoint, there's just about always something biting offshore, or also something fresh being harvested by our commercial fishermen in Monmouth County and other coastal counties throughout New Jersey. So something's always fresh. There's many opportunities for fresh seafood in the fall, but also year round here in Monmouth County and beyond. And as we just heard from Rachel, October is National Seafood Month, so also well suited for bringing home the fall harvest. Folks are probably familiar, especially with this group of New Jersey as the Garden State, but we also have very bountiful and productive marine ecosystems that support our coastal tourism economy and also our marine fishing and aquaculture industries, whether it be some of the coastal bays and rivers up to Middlesex County, all the way down to Delaware Bay. Many great opportunities for recreational fishing, including many great ones in Monmouth County, whether you're fishing off the shore in Sandy Hook State Park or down towards Manasquan, jumping on a friend's private boat, or a party or charter for hire boat from Atlantic Highlands down through Belmar. Many great recreational fishing opportunities really year round, and many in the fall. And looking at our commercial fishing ports in New Jersey, top ones by value and weight of landings, we have Belford Seafood Co-op up in Monmouth County, Point Pleasant and Barney Light in Ocean County, and then Atlantic City in Atlantic County, Cape May, and Port Norris. So a bit of the socioeconomic background for those who might not be familiar with the scale of our marine fisheries here in New Jersey. So the NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service looks at the job impacts, and in 2017, the state of New Jersey had about 39,000 jobs from commercial fishing and the seafood industry here in New Jersey, and another 14,000 jobs in 2017 from recreational fishing. As you see in the Mid-Atlantic, New Jersey is a big player in our marine, commercial, and recreational fisheries. In addition to the jobs, looking at the sales impacts in the Mid-Atlantic, in 2017, over $7 billion sales impacts from commercial fishing and seafood in New Jersey, and 1.8 billion from recreational fishing in the state of New Jersey. So very important socioeconomically in terms of the sales impacts and jobs, but also food production. Obviously, commercially harvested finfish and shellfish go towards local, regional, national, even international seafood markets, feeding folks near and afar, but also recreational fishing. Folks go fishing recreationally, not just for recreation, but due to a desire to harvest their own and consume their own seafood. So that both commercial and recreational harvested finfish and shellfish contribute to our seafood production here in New Jersey. Looking at the major commercial fishing ports, a few of them spotlighted here: Belford, Barnegat Light, Cape May, Wildwood, and Port Norris, getting an idea of the diversity of our commercial fisheries, of the species that are landed here by our commercial fisheries. These are the top 5 most valuable by port in the years 2015 through 2019, starting with Belford and Monmouth County. And you can see there's a diversity of fisheries, both coastal and offshore waters. The most valuable commercial fisheries in Belford: summer flounder, menhaden, which is not a food product, but the others all here are squid, scup, black sea bass, fall harvest of summer flounder, scup, and sea bass you'll see locally. Barnegat Light, Cape May, you see the most valuable sea scallops, also a variety of other finfish and shellfish. Rachel mentioned a few. And down in Port Norris, the Delaware Bay fisheries are more estuarine, looking at species like oysters, crab, again, menhaden, eel, or whelks. So we have very diverse fisheries and fresh seafood year-round from our commercial fisheries. If you're interested in figuring out some great retail markets, also restaurants, delivery pickup locations, or on the commercial side, some distributors, I'm partnering with this effort led by the NJDEP Division of Fish and Wildlife, also including the New Jersey Department of Ag. Just started this year, Support New Jersey Seafood Story Map, similar to what this group might be familiar with the Grown in Monmouth story map, but we're adding local seafood restaurants and markets that have harvested, grown New Jersey seafood products. So check out this story map, a good reference to find a great local market with New Jersey seafood. On the recreational side of things, we saw also very important socioeconomically and for food production. Some here are statistics from the NOAA Fisheries Economics of the United States. Total number of anglers, these numbers are in thousands, so about 1 million individuals participate in marine recreational fishing each year. About 30 to 60% are from coastal counties, also some from non-coastal New Jersey counties, but quite a few, about half, come from out of state. So the marine fisheries also serve as an important part of New Jersey, including Monmouth County and others, tourism industry where folks come to the coastal counties to fish recreationally or to harvest or to consume fresh seafood harvested by our commercial growers and wild harvesters. There are different modes by which you can go recreational fishing. You can, shown here is Atlantic Highlands, you can jump on a party boat and pay per person per day. You can get a smaller charter boat with groups of 6 to 12 as part of the for hire sector. You can also fish off if you have your own or a friend's private boat, or many of the shore-based opportunities off fishing piers, docks, or a beach, seen here in Sandy Hook. And actually, shore fishing is incredibly popular. Of the about 5 to 7 million trips taken each year in New Jersey, marine recreational fishing, about half of those are shore-based, fishing off the beach or off a pier or dock. So many great opportunities to fish recreationally and year-round. And here are the most common species caught recreationally by anglers throughout the state: summer flounder, black sea bass, bluefish, striped bass, tautog, otherwise known as blackfish. And these 4, sea bass, striped bass, bluefish, and blackfish, are really running in the fall, starting right around now, mid to late October and into December, are great opportunities to fish both off the beach or, in the case of black sea bass, even up to 50, 80 miles off the beach, recreational fishing. If you'd like to learn more about some of the recreational fishing opportunities or the management measures, check out this homepage of the NJDEP Division of Fish and Wildlife. You can hone in on this attention to anglers, gives you an idea of the seasons and possession minimum sizes for these species, There's also guides on surf fishing, marine docks and piers where you can go fishing, or help you guide it towards one of the many party and charter boats in Monmouth County, whether they're sailing out of Belmar or up in the Highlands, Atlantic Highlands, or further west towards Keyport. And if you are consuming, and hopefully you are, especially inspired by tonight's talks and Rachel and mine on seafood, some guides on seafood consumption, in addition to those that Rachel just mentioned, our NJES, we have a seafood safety website, which is a listing of the home pages of the major partners, state and federal, that have guidance on seafood consumption. I really like the NOAA Fish Watch program. They have a database on sustainable seafood. You can get great recommendations on seafood choices based upon health, nutrition, but also sustainability and environmental issues involved with our marine fisheries. So check that out. You can type in just about any species caught throughout the country. More locally, NJDEP's Fish Smart, Eat Smart program. You check out their website. They have seafood consumption guides for species such as blue crabs, striped bass, bluefish, etc. A great guide honed in here on our New Jersey seafood. And the New Jersey Department of Ag, Jersey Seafood website, also has great resources, whether it be recipes or also guides on where to purchase seafood, as we saw before with the Support New Jersey Seafood app. Rachel alluded to it, and in recognition of October being National Seafood Month, this year is our first year partnering between our Extension's Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources and the Family and Community Health Sciences Department to put on the What's the Catch? New Jersey Seafood and Healthy Living mini virtual seminar series. Our first night was last Wednesday night, October 14th. Myself and Lisa Calvo spoke about our marine fisheries and aquaculture industries here in New Jersey. And next Wednesday night, October 28th, registration is still open for this free program. If you'd like to learn more about the FCHS side of seafood, health and nutrition benefits of consuming seafood, also storage, preparation, recommendations, please join us next Wednesday night to learn more about seafood. And if you'd like to catch the recording of our first night, it is posted on the RCE of Cape May County's website. If you Google What's the Catch? New Jersey Seafood and Healthy Living, you can get caught up for our first night, which provide an overview of seafood production here in New Jersey. So I'd like to, again, thanks everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you for your attention, following the many great talks earlier this evening, but also segueing it here to think about our fall harvest, not just the great products grown from agriculture, commercial, and horticulture on land, but the many fresh local seafood products from our commercial fisheries, or if you go out and harvest yourself from our recreational fisheries. Thanks everyone, and I'm happy to take any questions in the chat. And here's my contact information if you'd like to reach out to me after this evening.
Thanks, Doug. That was great. Proud member to be one of those 1 million plus recreational fishermen. Can't say that I'm always catching something, but always trying.
It's about the experience, and a bonus if you get some fresh.
Great, thanks, Doug, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Before we can have time for some question and answer, but we have a quick poll that I'd like to ask you to participate in. So you should see that coming up on your screen. And as a university, Rutgers learns a lot about how well we're reaching diverse audiences through polls such as these. So they help us to inform our department about a presentation's usefulness, which ultimately assists us with future program planning. So you're not required to complete this information. However, if you choose not to answer a question, please select prefer not to respond. It's a total of 6 questions. So please refrain from hitting the submit button until you've completed all the questions. So thank you for attending and for filling out the poll. This will help us to deliver more programs and to always improve our programs. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Bill. So as they're doing that, I think you may have posted the link already in the chat, but Nancy asked, could you post that website for the first part of What's the Catch? Doug, or actually that isn't the link that you posted. Doug, do you have that available for Nancy? There it is right there. Thank you.
And now I'm going to post the registration for the second night.
What an awesome team. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, so any additional questions, if anyone has, please post them in the chat. We're here to answer your questions. And if there's anything more involved, feel free to reach out to us, give us a call, send us an email, any garden questions, or to get involved with the Master Gardeners, or to learn about any of the great recipes that Rachel has, just reach out to us. Okay. Looks like we have a majority of respondents. A 100% polling has been completed. So thank you, everyone. I'll invite you back next week, same time, 7 p.m. next Wednesday, to join us for the next episode of Bringing Home the Harvest from Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Monmouth County. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.